let's get this going and let everyone in.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Welcome in, everyone, to the PCEF committee meeting on July 23rd from 6 p.m. to 8. Welcome in, everyone, to the PCEF committee meeting on July 23rd, 2026 from 6 p.m. and we anticipate going until 8 p.m. this evening. Next slide, please. So, we have virtual meeting participation check-ins every time we convene, reminding everyone that this is a public meeting, so it'll be recorded. Public comment should be about 6:10. I also want to let everyone know with this meeting in particular, we will not be having a MODA-centered discussion this evening because the people who were going to give a presentation withdrew the presentation. So we will not be focusing on the MODA Center this evening. Also, wanting to give us guidelines for public participation, please raise your hand. Especially if you want to give public comment, we'll ask for that, then raise your hand, and then I'll ask you to unmute. Everyone will be muted. The video will be on for committee members and presenters only, and mics will be muted for the public. Again, this is a recorded meeting and captioning is available. And chat is for introductions, maybe information gets put into it, but generally it is spoken. So next slide, please. So our agenda, welcome and introductions, especially to our new committee members. Then we'll have public comment, approval of our meeting minutes from 6:10. We'll have a briefing on Save Our Services ordinance, program updates. We'll take a break around 7 o'clock and come back, probably 5 to 10 minutes there. Then we'll have a PCEF focused briefing and Q&A on the recently adopted fiscal year 26-27 budget. And we'll have a climate investment plan annual update, overview, and progress. So we have got a great meeting this evening, lots to learn, and there will be lots of opportunities to ask questions. Next slide, please. So we love to kick this off by doing introductions. I'm going to ask a question this evening, and I'm going to model the answer that we would love to hear from you. So I am Dr. Christine Moses. I use she, her pronouns. I am your committee facilitator, and blueberries with cream, with whipped cream, homemade whipped cream is the food that means it's summer. So what is the food that means it's summer to you? So Tracy, who is our co-chair, would you like to kick us off next and then popcorn over to the next person?
I absolutely will. Thank you so much, Dr. Moses. Good evening, everyone, and a special warm welcome to our new committee members. My name is Tracy Scott. I am the co-chair of the PCEF committee. I use she, her pronouns, and the food that most makes me think that it's summer has to be barbecue. I'm sorry, I'm a Midwesterner, so it's going to be barbecue. I am going to popcorn this over to one of our newest members, and I think it was the first that I saw on camera, and that would be Randall.
Hi there, good evening. Thank you very much. So I think the one that sticks out, I'm Randall Friesen, Columbia Pacific. The thing that sticks out for me for food would be also the barbecue, but strawberries. We just bought a strawberry plant, and this year has like been really fruitful. It's been great, part of the pun. So
Beautiful.
I will pass it over to Anna.
Good evening, everybody. Anna Allen, she, her pronouns, committee member. And when I think of summer foods right now, I think of like huckleberries and salmon berries, just pretty much all of the berries. And this last weekend, I was able to go by a farmer's market that is pretty new in my area and pick up all of those things. And it was awesome. So that is it for me. And I will kick it over to D'Angelo. Did you go already?
Not yet.
Perfect.
D'Angelo, we cannot hear you. You're on mute.
About I can't hear you though, so I'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
No?
We can hear you now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't hear you, so I'll figure it out. But D'Angelo Moaning, co-chair of the PCEF committee. I don't want to be redundant because I think barbecue too, but I would say blueberries. Every summer I go pick blueberries. And so for me, that's when I know summer's kicked off, is when the farm's open. I will pass it to Tamara.
Hello, good evening. Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Energy Coalition, member at large here at the committee. And when I think of summer, I think a lot of the things have been shared, but it's fresh berries for sure. And I'm not sure who to pass it to. So sorry.
Megan or Robin?
Okay, Megan.
Sure, I'll go. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan, or Meg. You can call me either one. And I'm a longtime committee member, 6.5 years now. And I'm really excited for the new members. Hi and welcome. And love all the things said. I'll add zucchini. I grow, gardeners that grow them. It's kind of a joke. You like grow so many big ones, you have to like pawn them off on your neighbors. That's the space I'm in of zucchini growing at the moment. And also lots of zucchini bread. So yeah, I'll pass to you, Robin.
Good evening, everybody. Robin Wang, committee member, he, him. I think first, welcome everybody. It's great to see a full cast, here at the meetings, and look forward to working with everybody here. I have to go with blueberries. Right before this meeting, I just picked about 2 or 3 pints of blueberries from our bush in the backyard, so that's top of mind for me. Danielle.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Did my audio get worked out? Amazing. Okay, hi everyone. It's really nice to be here. Danielle Walker, new committee member as well. I'm gonna go with a later summer food, which is a fresh tomato out of the garden on top of a bagel with cream cheese and a little bit of everything but the bagel seasoning on top. That just summer perfection right there. So. Is there anyone else left from the committee? Or do I pass it now to staff?
Could you pass it to Sam, please?
Okay. Sam.
Thank you, Danielle, and really just happy to see a full crew here. Welcome, Randall, Danielle, Tamara. It's good to see everyone. Sam Barrasso, he and him pronouns, program manager with the Clean Energy Fund team here at the city. And for me, I feel bad saying that we eat berries all year round, so that isn't because I got kids and we don't get good berries outside season. I get it. So for me, it is tomatoes. It is, and it's gazpacho specifically. I feel like I don't do tomato soup or gazpacho until we got really sweet, ripe tomatoes that we can get here locally. So or in our backyard. So that's for me. That feels very summer, and only thing I will eat in the summer. Or I will only eat in the summer. So with that, I'll send it over to James, who will also be presenting this evening with me.
Yeah, hi everybody, and good to meet you all new committee members. Welcome. My name is James Valdez, he, him pronouns, and I work on PCEF staff on strategic partnerships and policy issues. And yeah, a lot of the good ones have already been taken in terms of summer delicacies, also berries, but I want to give a shout out to one that is just kind of coming out here soon. The Maryhill peach feels like once those hit, the shelves and get into fully, ripe mode, that means it is definitely summer. So I just started seeing them go out in like the last week. So that's my summer fruit. And is that Sam, I guess back to you. Is anybody else from our team presenting that we want to intro?
think it's just gonna be you and I. And then I think we'll have we will be having Maria Sippin, Chief of Staff for Councilor Green present. So Maria, I'll turn it to you if you want to jump in.
Sure. You'd like me to participate in the
Yes,
introduction?
please.
Fantastic. Let me get on video there. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Maria Sippin. My pronouns are they or she. I'm Counselor Mitch Green's Chief of Staff. And my summertime food, I would have to say it's hot dogs. Love the grill, love going around town and seeing all the little hot dog specials. And I think in true Counselor Green fashion, you might know that we are trying to pass an ordinance to enable street vending and to make it easier for people to participate in that kind of entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome in everyone. As we do with this committee, next slide, please, Sam. We are going to center ourselves, and this is an opportunity for us to bring all of ourselves into this meeting and to ground ourselves so we can be present, have a great conversation, and not worry about the other things that are always pressing on us from other responsibilities. So I ask you, you are invited to close your eyes or gaze softly down. You can also look out the window if you like, or doodle. But I want you to feel your feet firmly planted on the floor. And then feel the chair and how it supports the back of your legs and your low back. I invite you now to do box breath. To breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4. However fast that goes, it's totally fine. But being able to come back to your breath is always the grounding strategy anytime you become dysregulated. So I'm going to count the first one, and then the next 2 are on your own. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. 2 more on your own. And when you're done with your round of breaths, please feel free to come back, gently open your eyes, and take a big stretch up. Oh, yes, wake up that lymphatic system. Woo! Okay, thank you so very much. Next slide, please. Public comment. All right, we had several people sign up for public comment. We are going to give 3 minutes for each person to give their public comment if they're less people than 4 or 5. If there's more than 5, then we'll give 2 minutes. And I see, Diane, that your hand is raised, and so I would love to invite you to come off camera if you want. And to give your public comment, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. As someone who knocked on doors and helped organize for the original PCEF ballot measure, I just want to encourage the PCEF Advisory Committee to take an active role in fighting for this community treasure. We need your help making it clear to the community what PCEF has accomplished and that there are no excess funds. Oregonian reporter Gosia Wisniewska quoted city administrators that the larger than anticipated funds are still less than 1.5% of the money needed to fulfill the city's climate emergency plan in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And as we see climate chaos increasing across the country, it's even more critical that we do what we can to mitigate the crisis. As you know, the climate investment plan allocations for multi-year projects mean that if funds are diverted, those projects will suffer. So we need your leadership and support, both in fighting the ridiculous police ballot measure, but also not caving into pressure for the Moda Center renovations or other city budget filling measures. The PCEF Community Advisory Committee created the Equity Plus Climate Framework to guide decisions in line with the original purposes of the grant, and it's important to continue to push for those values and not let them be undermined. There were promises made during the transition to city oversight. Whoops, sorry, my thing disappeared. Sorry, where'd it go? To city oversight for the original purposes, that the original purposes would be upheld, and we need to hold the city to that. The amount of money to meet needed goals will be far greater than the Portland Clean Energy Fund can provide, and thus instead of focusing on how to raid this fund to backfill other city bureau needs, we should all be grateful for the foresight that went into developing this unique source of funding. PCEF work must continue and the program maintained, just as voters had the wisdom to put in place to not make the substantial progress that global climate scientists have urgently called for to mitigate the existential crisis we face by reducing emissions and developing climate resiliency strategies locally will be extremely costly in the long term, both in terms of economic impacts as well as human health and well-being. We need the PCEF Advisory Committee to exhibit the leadership needed to lead the fight to protect PCEF in the way that voters intended and to address the existential crisis we all face by reducing harm as best we can, especially for frontline and the most vulnerable communities. Thank you. I know this is preaching to the choir, but I just feel like this is the time we really need your leadership. A lot of people still don't know what this is. And so getting out there and figuring out ways to do the publicity, figuring out ways to make it very, very clear to the public that there are no excess funds and that we need this and why is we're looking to you and your leadership for this. And so I appreciate you being public servants and doing this, and I hope you'll try and take it to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. All right, I see a hand, the Google Pixel 6a. Who might this be? Who wants to give public testimony? Who has their hand raised? You can come off your microphone, or please come onto your microphone. Okay. No one is there. All right. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who would like to give public testimony? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on. So thank you so much, Diane. Next slide, please. We're going to approve the meeting minutes from last month. And new board members, we have a modified consent. And so, Sam, if you want to show that, that slide, that would be wonderful. So I'm going to ask to approve the minutes from last month. You can either say, I affirm, I stand to the side, or I vote no. So as new board members, maybe you've read them, so you feel you can affirm, or you can stand aside, or you can vote no, however you want to present yourself at this time. So I would like to, the motion is to accept the board minutes from last month. Who affirms accepting the board minutes?
Dr. Moses, I affirm.
Pardon?
I affirm, Tracy.
Very good. Okay, excellent. Robin, Megan, Yep. Anna?
Affirm.
Yes. D'Angelo?
Affirm.
Very good. Randall?
Affirm.
Very good. Danielle?
I will stand aside since I was not there.
Okay. Megan, did I ask you already? I apologize.
Yes, I affirm.
Very good. And I missed someone else. Tamara, I'm sorry.
Stand aside.
Very good. Okay. Thank you so much for that. That is our modified consensus decision making, and the meeting minutes are approved. Really appreciate that. Next slide, please.
Dr. Moses, sorry to interrupt, but I do think the person with Google Pixel is back. They put something in the chat.
Very good. Thank you so much. I was very focused on getting the minutes done. The person from the Google Pixel 6, if you would like to give public comment, feel free.
Thank you. We're out right now protesting, so my phone is all over the place. But thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
So I'm Lupe, and okay.
Yeah.
First, I want to commend you guys for the e-bike rebate program and the free air conditioning program. These programs are amazing, and they have lifted up the vulnerable community members PCEF was designed to help. So thank you for that. The Portland Clean Energy Initiative was on our ballots in 2018, nearly 8 years ago, and it passed overwhelmingly with 65% of the votes. On the ballot, it detailed specifically how this money would be spent. 50 to 75% would go towards nonprofit clean energy projects. 20 to 25% would go towards clean energy jobs training for our marginalized communities, including women, the BIPOC community, people with disabilities, and low-income people. And then 5% could go towards future innovations and an annual audit. The ballot was very clear about what PCEF funds could be spent on. The Moda Center and the Portland Police Bureau are not on that list. You want to create climate resiliency in the city? You plant trees in low-income neighborhoods to reduce the urban heat island index. You don't give entitled Texas billionaire Tom Dundon a blank check. You improve public transit, and you make it free, rather than making cuts, which we're doing right now. And once you make cuts, the people don't come back. We know that. You make Portland streets ADA compliant, which they are not currently, and you build sidewalks in all neighborhoods so that everyone has safe access to our beautiful outdoors. You could put in public bathrooms and hire people to maintain them throughout our city so that low-income people can finally safely benefit from third spaces. Over 200,000 Portlanders voted for PCEF in 2018, and we refuse to see that money mismanaged and pilfered by a billionaire and the police, who racially profile the communities this fund is meant to serve. If you deny the will of the people, we will fight you every step of the way, and you will become infamous in the city. I worked for the Conservation Corps. I know what conservation projects are, and the Moda Center and PPB are not it. There is no honor among thieves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lupe. We really appreciate those comments. Jordan Lewis, I see that your hand is up. Would you like to give public comment?
Yeah, I originally wasn't going to testify, but I do just want to second everything that's been said before me. I think a lot of people here are opposed to the PCEF to police transfer, so I'm agreeing with that. And I'm really concerned about money going towards the Moda Center because we are at a time where we're cutting our public transit really, really drastically, and that's hurting a lot of working people really hard. And I think it's not lost on me that Tom Dundon made his fortunes in like predatory used car loans. And so I definitely think he saw dollar signs in his eyes when he entered the Portland market and heard about how much public transit was being cut. So I just wanted to second a lot of the Moda Center observations, even though that's not being heard today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Any other people who want to give public comment? Okay. So thank you so much for that. We deeply appreciate people taking their time and using their voice and giving the committee perspective. Thank you so much. So briefing on Save Our Services Ordinance using PCEF 2526 interest. So Maria, I would love to invite you in.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who gave public comment too. This really reflects a lot of what my office has been receiving over the past few months. And I know these comments still keep pouring in, and we hear you. I would like to offer up the presentation too, Sam, if you think that's appropriate. I could also just be more informal with it, but some people might like to follow along. And you can certainly email it out to the committee and put it on the website or add it to the chat. But I welcome the use of the slides if you think you can get that up there. Sorry for the last minute send on that. We had some late developments on what has transpired in council, and I wanted to make sure you had the latest. So I'll go ahead and get started with the intro slide, if anything, and you can take your time to get that up, which I sent an email. So let me introduce myself formally. Hello, PCEF committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Maria Sippin. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilor Mitch Green in District 4 and a former PCEF co-chair and committee member. So this place is quite familiar. Thank you again for accepting my request to come to the committee today. I know our budget season has just wrapped and there are no active requests for now, but I wanted to close the loop. This was something that was important to Councilor Green, and he urged me to come to the committee at any point so that we could share our reflections about the budget and the use of PCEF funds specifically, which I know some of you are really curious about. I know you're witnessing this in conversations that are playing out in council, in these YouTube meetings. You're reading the headlines in the media and you're following the reactions on Instagram and Blue Sky. Some of you might also be participating in that yourselves. I might recognize some of you in the chat and in the testimony. I know it's been a hell of a week and a lively one in downtown. We started off with the Guinness World Record set by 1,060 Portlanders on e-bikes, including some PCEF staff who I saw that day. And then we had a joyous Pride event right after. And then yesterday, we finalized our vote on the supplemental budget ordinance as our last-ditch effort to save jobs and services. Please go to the next slide. So I can't speak for other council offices, but several of us banded together during the budget season to sponsor our shared amendments. I'll talk about the ones that propose the use of PCEF income interest specifically. And for simplicity, I'm just going to call these Councilor Green's objectives and reflections, but other offices shared these sentiments too. I invited some councilors and their staff, but they are all at other commitments. Councilor Green's charge was simply to reverse some of the administration's core realignment effort and to avoid service disruption and the lost capacity that would be difficult to restore in the future. These were massive cuts in the mayor's budget that were frankly just unacceptable. These were cuts to public safety, parks, and service-oriented programs like 311 that Portlanders rely on when they have to report non-emergency issues and to get help over the phone or via email. So that's really what we've been fighting for. So if you've been following along since springtime, you've seen our failed amendments, you see us keep going back to the drawing board. And it really is because the mayor's proposed budget cut deeply into areas that we found unacceptable. Next slide, please. So these are Councilor Green's budget amendments. I'm going to cover the two primary ones, and these were the ones that involved using PCEF interest. So it was a Services First amendment introduced in June, and then the Save Our Services ordinance introduced last week. And you can see the co-sponsors listed here. You're going to see some repeated names because we kept trying and we wanted to stick together and champion the same things. I also want to make clear that the PCEF committee was notified of these two items once they were filed. And we also requested to come here. So I'm really honored that we finally made it through. And I know it's super hard to schedule these requests. So I'm happy I'm here. And you all know how in the budget, items emerge quickly in response to the conditions of these budget deliberations. So you can see the first amendment that we introduced involved 16.5 million of PCEF interest. And then the second one, our final effort, because the first one obviously didn't pass, our second one was a reduction of the first one because we heard from some of our opponents that it was too much of the PCEF interest. They wanted to use PCEF interest for something else. They wanted to use a different kind of fund. So we reduced the use of PCEF interest and even reduced the amount of jobs. You see that we started with trying to save 96, and then we whittled it down to 55. And then you'll see much later that the one we passed just yesterday took us down to 30 jobs. Next slide, please. So why PCEF interest? And feel free, staff, you can dispute this if you want. This is straight from the budget office and the PCEF program. But there was $27 million that was readily available to be appropriated. Our ordinance proposed about half of that already accrued total. And for us, this was really following the precedent that had been set years ago where PCEF interest entered the game of balancing the budget. So we wanted to be more transparent than ever before. We wanted to define what the PCEF interest was going to be used for, because up until now, past councils and the mayor hadn't really specified the use of PCEF interest. It was taken from PCEF, put into the general fund, and it was spread out however needed. But here we thought that because we were such PCEF advocates and we understood how sensitive this was, we wanted to tell you every job that was being saved, every program, and we listed it out from day one. So those are the line items that came along with our request to use PCEF interest. We also wanted to make sure that the use of PCEF interest wasn't impacting the whole of the climate investment plan. We specifically did not want to change allocations in the climate investment plan, although in the mayor's proposed budget, there were instances of that would have jeopardized allocations in the CIP and would have required a later approval of the use of those funds to amend the CIP eventually. So that's how we got here and why we use PCEF interest. It really was just a funding source that was available. We felt like for these uses to save jobs and services and the urgency around it, that it was appropriate. And we consulted with different groups of people who expressed their concerns, who expressed a little bit of their nervousness around this and their interest in moving forward very differently in the future after this budget season to change how PCEF interest is being used. Next slide, please. So it sounds like you're going to be receiving more of this information later. I'm glad you'll be talking about the budget later in the meeting. So I won't go too much into detail in some of the things you all might talk about, but this is my favorite slide and I'm looking forward to this because, you know, even after all these years of serving PCEF as a committee member, as someone who helped with the CIP, I'm still learning a lot about better governance and safeguards for PCEF. And I do think that first year when I was on the committee where council made their first request of the committee to use PCEF interest, I had all these feelings all over again. So some of you might share those sentiments of why interest again, why this year, and when are you going to stop doing that? So that's something that we heard a lot from different folks. And, you know, but one of the top takeaways I took was that the media is still getting PCEF very wrong. There's a lot of misinterpretation, a lot of misinformation. And I realized it's important for my office to invest a lot of time in correcting that misinformation. Some of the PCEF staff have heard this from me over the years, like we have to do more comms. We have to not just talk about our victories, but to get right on it when it comes to educating the public about the value of PCEF, what it does and what it doesn't. A lot of the misinformation stems from people still thinking, and reporters and counselors sometimes thinking that PCEF is coming from paychecks, or they're regurgitating these talking points that PCEF is taxing regular Portlanders when it's actually a surcharge on large corporations. So that's the one that really gets to me. And there's a lot of misinformation about PCEF and MODA. I would have to say my office sends a ton of emails correcting people on this because people think PCEF money is readily available to go straight into MODA. But what we know is that council has to take an action to amend any part of the CIP. So if we have to shift money out of the CIP and move it into MODA, that would certainly require a council action and a lot of public engagement. And next, I think what's important for me too is after hearing from past PCEF co-chairs during this process, past PCEF committee members, the Friends of PCEF Coalition, and similar organizations, they really told us, Maria, is this the last year we're going to use PCEF interest? Is there a way we can protect PCEF altogether, interest and CIP? And what does that look like? So I'm really open to that. Councilor Green is so interested in how we do this differently because I understand that the precedent we set years ago around PCEF interest, it still has impacts to today. And then finally, because I think it's so hard to come to the committee sometimes, you've got a packed agenda, we have terrible availability, and some of these actions just happen at just the worst times. I was thinking, what about a quarterly slot for a counselor to visit? And then we cancel as needed. We leave room so that we can always slide in here, maybe not just our office, but other counselors who want to pay a visit to PCEF, or maybe having a regular committee liaison to council offices so we can speak regularly. I know that's not something that's easy to do because you're volunteers, but we would certainly welcome that and would welcome anyone to come talk to council offices anytime so that this doesn't really feel like a budget transaction that just comes out this time of year. Next slide. So again, I'm going to go back to our latest package that we put forward, the Save Our Services. It failed. We whittled it down to 55 jobs. We really wanted to make sure this budget action could protect affected employees and put money back into the BLT reserves. This failed, but ultimately much of what we wanted in this transferred over to our opponent's budget package, and that's what was voted on yesterday and saved. Next slide. One of the things that we also advocated for during the budget process, which is why we wanted to save so many parks jobs and parks programs, was because Portland voters approved the parks levy, and that parks levy taxed voters. And we made a promise that if we passed this, we would do our best to keep our level of services intact. But with the mayor's budget, even after passing this new tax, the parks levy, there were severe cuts to parks, and we just couldn't have that. So we wanted to tell Portlanders, you voted for parks, and then now you're seeing a budget that cuts deeply into it, that just doesn't align with how our office values voter actions and how we want to stay true to what voters wanted. So that's why we fought for community center hours, rec leaders, staffing up senior programs, and ultimately, these didn't all make it into the version of the budget, supplemental budget that passed yesterday, but we certainly fought for this through and through. Next slide. So again, parts of the things we tried to compromise all budget long were restoring key services and positions, even public safety PS3s, the folks you call when there's an incident that police shouldn't be reporting to, but other public safety should report to. We wanted rescue units funded, and although this would only be one time, we just couldn't do without these rescue units not being in operation. There were all kinds of other frontline staff jobs, lots of labor unions who weighed in, jobs they said should not be lost, and finding other ways to incorporate things that our opponents wanted in the budget, like police training and other types of things that we didn't initially have. Even with all of that, we still didn't get their vote. Next slide. So the end result, what we ended up voting for, even though it was a tough pill to swallow, was this $10 million package funded by general fund contingency, which we finally got to swap out initially, was supposed to be funded by police accountability dollars that voters also voted for. We just could not accept that they would be tapping into that to fund this $10 million package. So we shifted it to general fund contingency. We would look in the spring for any underspent funds and distribute it so that it would cover all 10 million. This serves 30 jobs, which is a huge difference from what we were fighting for from the beginning. This ended up including police training and fewer services saved, and that passed with a 10-2 vote. Next slide. I think that's it. Well, I'll stop there. I try to run through this so that you could have more time for questions or dialogue. And if there's anything I can't answer now, I'd be happy to get back to you later. Appreciate it.
Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Tracy.
Thank you for the presentation, Maria. You sent 2 PowerPoint presentations. Was there a difference between the 2?
Yes, one is the actual PowerPoint file and the other is the PDF one, so that you can access whichever is easier on the device you're on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, D'Angelo and then Meg.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me. And Tracy, I'm sorry, not Tracy, Maria, thank you for just being so patient with us as we kind of work through our scheduling constraints. As you know, it's just been a difficult time, but I appreciate you being here with the committee. I just want to openly vocalize, that I am very concerned about the dangerous precedent that utilizing PCEF interests before it's accrued. What the precedent that sets, like generally in the past 2 years, PCEF interest has accrued, it's been utilized, and we were able at the time to do that because the CIP wasn't in motion. But now, as it's being utilized while the CIP is in motion and while it's necessary for us to use that in these future iterations of the CIP, I'm just very concerned about what this means for future iterations of city council coming to use the fund or use the interest. I'm also concerned about, the fact that PCEF interest is the only interest that's regularly utilized to fill these budget shortfalls, and that there's not been a proposed or at least, active source of revenue that we can utilize as a city to fix a laceration. This feels like putting a Band-Aid on a laceration. And I don't want to continue to jeopardize either the CIP or the city. I think that there should be other avenues for finding ways to fill this budget shortfall. And I understand that these are very important jobs that we need to save, but I also have to ask if these are just quick fixes, that is this the best usage of the funds? I'm not sure. If it doesn't actively solve an issue, but rather kick the can down the road, then are we utilizing the funding in the best possible way? And that's just something that I'd be interested to hear what my committee members think about that. So thank you.
Thank you, D'Angelo. I would like to respond quickly to that. I completely agree. I think this is always a risk, and I know it's a risk we were willing to take because of the nature of the cuts and the types of jobs and services we wanted to save. I know we always rely on forecasts, and forecasts aren't always the kind of sources that we feel secure in following, but I know that's something that's always available to us at the city, and we often make decisions based on forecasts. And I share your same sentiments around making sure we don't continue to perpetuate precedents that could potentially risk our entire fund. And personally, I think even from Councilor Green's office, it is just an interesting way to look at PCEF, where the interest feels like it's separate from the whole fund, where we personally might see it all as one whole thing, but because of precedent and because of previous council actions, PCEF interest has always been seen as a different bucket. But I think in my heart and in my mind, I see it all as PCEF funding. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Good to see you, committee member, and thanks for coming and bringing us up to date on what's happening. Do you have a question for staff? Maria, you invited staff to possibly offer a different perspective, and Sam or James, following the budget conversation, Maria characterized it as 27 million available immediately or something, and I just wanted to hear staff perspective on that one. I'll maybe pause and just finish that first.
So I think you're calling me in, so let me jump in real quick. Yes, there's generally our finance team and our accountants are looking at the fund, interest is accruing. Historically, it's been after the fiscal year ends and closes, and we do our financial audits of our books and reconcile everything, that's oftentimes served as sort of the firmed up interest figure, since there is sometimes just some move for when things are finalized. But generally, I think it's fair to say that that is in the ballpark of the interest that would be accruing in the previous fiscal year. That if practices and patterns that have played out in the past 2 fiscal years continue to play out, would be proposed for instance, the next budget year.
Thanks, Sam. And then, sorry, Maria, my questions are for staff, I guess, at this exact moment, but then I just like historically, and I know our new committee members weren't around for all that, and even I could use a refresher on comments on interest in general. Like going back in time, my recollection is that city's legal team or somebody told us that like it is common practice of the city that the interest is considered separate, and therefore that's why we don't allocate it in our CIP. And I guess I would just love to hear if I'm characterizing that accurately, or if there's like some update.
I think we are certainly in a slightly unique situation, but no, the interest is I think there's two things. In our original design of the climate investment plan, we did budget a certain amount of interest into the CIP. So interest earnings, we do plan, there are a certain amount of interest earnings that are absolutely budgeted as part of the broader climate investment plan that carries us until June 30, 2029. That said, interest earnings, because of a lot of program design, ramp up, all sorts of things, have been larger than originally projected. And so there is additional interest earnings than we had budgeted into the climate investment plan. And so at some point now, when we get to the next climate investment plan, we have a bigger grasp of just generally what our ramp up is, our ramp down, all of that, such that we would, at a starting point, one, expect to have less interest. And we'll talk about this later in the budget slides. We will not be carrying the same fund balance because we have many one-time large capital projects that will spend down the fund. So I think long term, there will not be this amount of carrying interest that the city over time should expect to see. There still will be a tail of some amount of interest, but it will go downward. And then we would be budgeting it into the climate investment plan as the expected actions, unless told otherwise.
Okay, so that's helpful. So as of right now, that 27 million is not allocated in this AP, and it will be sort of just accruing interest if it's not redirected in some other way coming now. Is that a fair way to put that?
It would, at some point, it would be something that we may bring into, should there be demand as part of your climate investment plan review process.
And that was the last comment or question I wanted to bring up, Maria. I really appreciated that last slide you had on reflections, and I don't think we've had a good conversation as a committee about, and I'd love to. I don't know if tonight's the space or sometime soon at an upcoming meeting, but I share your perspective that I'd like to be more proactive as a committee about thinking about this relationship with interest and city budget process. I think I agree with all your reflections, except that I would maybe add nuance to one, in that the CIP is a 5-year plan, and the city is on an annual budget cycle. So there is a bit of a tension there. And we have developed our own annual review process of the CIP where we make recommendations. And I still don't feel like that lines up perfectly with the city budget, because we're evaluating our CIP right now, and yet we're hearing about this interest. So I don't know exactly how to solve all that, but I think some of your ideas of a standing meeting and liaising, I like that. But I also want the PCEF committee to like steer it a bit more and think how it would fit into our CIP update process that we've developed. So I guess I would want to hear your reactions, and staff, if you have ideas on better synergizing all this, I'd love to hear them.
Thank you, Megan. Maria, and then Robin.
Actually, Robin, jump in, and then I'll jump in after.
Okay.
I think I'll remember what I have to say, but Robin's rightfully in the stack. Go.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Maria. I think I still have reservations about the precedents that we set a few years ago. It was needed at the time, and I can certainly see the value, but I think it's time for us with the next CIP to clean it up. I think we should be more intentional and deliberate with the language in the CIP, And as we start the next CIP process, I think we should bake in the full amount, not a contingent amount, the full amount of interest that we can earn and allocate it to specific programs. So, for example, if we find ourselves 6 years from now with an extra $10 million of funds, I would love to have a conversation. Well, I won't be on a committee at that point, but I would love to have this committee have a conversation about, hey, we have $10 million extra and because of interest, and this needs to be allocated towards an existing program that is oversubscribed. Could it be, Cooling Portland? It could be e-bikes, whatever, right? We know during the annual CIP process, there are programs that are just, the demand far outstrips the resources that we have by a large margin. And I would love to be able to bake those contingencies, those scenarios into the plan and stop having these conversations going forward.
Thank you, Robin. Maria, go ahead, and then D'Angelo, you're gonna wrap us up.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, the original PCEF appointee aura here is so strong. I love being in the middle of Megan and Robin. It just takes me back. Megan, there's so many reflections that I couldn't fit on the slide. But again, anyone, please talk to Counselor Green's office, talk to me. I have even other colleagues like Counselor Murillo and Avalos who share a lot of similar reflections too. I think in this budget, to put PCEF interest forward was like not an easy option for us, but I think given all the competing amendments, for example, one that was taking from the Police Accountability Fund that would destabilize it before it even got started, that was just a non-starter for us. So PCEF interest, we thought we could weigh these risks at the moment, but long term, Robin, I definitely hear you on that. And Megan, I think these questions around, well, is PCEF interest good for now? Is it safe? Is it intact? So currently, I forgot to add this, and with the supplemental budget that did pass yesterday, it's using general fund contingency from whatever pot is available. There's like fine print in there that says if it's PCEF interest that is available, that could be the source. If maybe it's police funding because they haven't hired all these vacancies for police officers, it could be their underspend, but I imagine they're not going to let any of that go. And then there's underspend in other areas, but I think PCEF interest, while it's not named in our colleagues' supplemental budget language, it is still not off limits. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there because there could be a request or a notification later if that becomes the source, that way you can anticipate that. But I know it's not free and clear yet, which is why Councilor Green's final comments were, we're going to keep watching to make sure this doesn't come after police oversight money, because that's something we want to keep intact. And then we'll obviously have to watch the CIP and other areas where in the spring, if budgets have to be adjusted, they're going to look anywhere and everywhere if things don't add up. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. D'Angelo, do you want to hop in or do you want Tracy to go?
I think we could do both because my comments are brief. I just want to add on to what Robin mentioned and even think about if there is additional funding, if that could go into community grants, because we all know that community grants are pretty underfunded. So if there was any extra revenue or any extra within the fund that we could move, I would like to see it move there.
Thank you.
And Dr. Moses, I realize this is probably going to take a little bit longer because I'm asking Sam to give us a report out. So Sam, perhaps we can have this discussion at a future PCEF committee meeting, but I'd like to know, how durable is this notion of having considerable interest that the city has been able to claim over the last couple of years? Do we see this being a durable issue going forward? Do we see, like in the next 5 to 7 years, that there's going to be these large pots of interest that are accrued? Or do you see that we will be spending down the budget at a certain rate, the available funds, so that we don't really have this type of challenge? And I realize it may be, a little bit longer that you need to explain it, and we're kind of at time, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say this really quickly. I would expect within the next few years that this sort of interest will not be there. Not to this extent. Certainly not to this extent based on just some of the large projects that we'll be spending down this year, next year, so you will not be seeing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we can follow up in more detail in another meeting.
Maria, thank you so much for being here this evening. It was wonderful to hear your passion and deeply appreciate it and your former service on this committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a nice place to visit, and you can always reach out to me. Take care.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, 6:58. Let's take a break until 7:10. We will come back at 7:10. Sound good? Is that good with you, Sam? Beautiful. Okay. 12 minutes. Mm. Welcome in, everyone. Wendy, making sure that we are going to be recording now. Should I assume that, Sam? Yeah, okay, great. So Sam, you're up and program updates super quick. You're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Welcome back, y'all. So I'm actually gonna keep the program updates really brief here this evening. In no small part, I want to get to the rest of the agenda, and we've written them. So for members of the public and for committee members, you all have these in your inbox. For members of the public, these program updates are posted online. I mean, the one most obvious program update, we're just so excited to have a full committee again. But two, we've gone out for recruitment this week for a regenerative agriculture and green infrastructure project manager. There's been a whole host of summer events that we've been showing up to, including the Portland's attempt to set the World Guinness records last week. We're a big we do fund a portion of some of the Bike Town efforts, and so that was a celebration we're equally excited to be part of. Some of the things that you all haven't heard about that I just want to acknowledge, flag, and encourage you all to take a look at the written program updates are. Our workforce policy coordinator, Abby Bandaraga, has been working on our respectful workplace program policies. So these are our policies where how we work with our contractors, our grantees to make sure as they take on our capital projects, how they set up safe and respectful work sites. And so we've been working with a group called Gamut Project Solutions to really update that process. And what they're doing is really take a deep understanding of all of our different projects, the small projects, the big, large capital projects, and figuring out how we develop some tailored solutions. And so we're just wrapping up that work and expect to put together, they've helped us really design what will be ultimately a request for proposals for folks to help us deliver some of those safe and respectful worksite policies and programs to our contractors. So we've done that work over the past few years. We know that it's needed a lot more work, and now we've kind of fine-tuned what we think we need there. And so that's something we're excited about. I think just know that we're deep in the middle of our community grants cycle review right now. And in the next little bit, we'll be moving into our scoring panels here in early August. I know some committee members are going to be participating in that, and just want to thank you all for that. When we move into just some of our work in our building efficiency and renewables efforts, one key thing I just want to acknowledge, and it's a moment of celebration, probably something we'll celebrate once later this fall, but Cooling Portland. We've now installed just over 23,000 portable units. And as of July 1st, the program is no longer doing any more intake. Our objective is to get to our 25,000 units and shift and move into and really put some of the additional resources as a program into the more durable long-term options, such as energy-friendly homes, which now has about 200 participating households, and that's where we do our deep energy retrofits. I think with that, I think that maybe what I'll wrap up here, I'll just say we're working on developing a few different requests for proposals to gear up for Strategic Program 5. That was our building upgrades for severe weather response. We're working on that to develop a solicitation that hopefully will head out here later this fall. And then as well working on our solicitation framework for our regenerative agriculture like site acquisition program. That's Strategic Program 9. So that's it. There's much more in there. I encourage folks to take a look and follow back up if you've got questions. There's a lot there, and I know we're going to start teasing out how do we refine that, make sure that what you're seeing is differences from month to month, but that's all in the program updates for the month.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yes, D'Angelo.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to say thank you for the update, Sam. It's really helpful and encouraging to know, the breadth of what the committee and what PCEF as a program is doing. I'm particularly very encouraged by the respectful workplace planning. As obviously with the kind of work that I do, I always love to hear ways that we get contractors engaged, particularly in the programs that we have. So thank you.
Wonderful. All right. So let's go to the next slide, please, which I think is the budget briefing.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. And thank you, Dr. Moses. So what we're going to walk through is a series of slides that now that the budget is wrapped up, we're going to be walking through, and we've cut these slides into different ways to give you all a sense for how our next fiscal year's budget breaks down. So you all have a sense for the spending. This is something I suspect as we move forward, we're going to figure out how do we refine and do, but this is a starting point and really an opportunity to ask questions to understand what's going to happen. Some of this will come back as we go through the annual update process with our subcommittee members, and some of this we'll touch on in those efforts. But this is really just getting into the budget that just began a couple weeks ago. And so I just will encourage questions throughout. I've got probably about 9 or so slides here, and we'll jump in. So just a few takeaways that you're gonna
Tracy.
Sam, am I the only person not seeing slides?
Yep.
Do other people see slides?
No, we are not seeing slides.
Well, thank you very much.
Even from your last bit that you gave the program updates, there were no slides there.
Oh, well, there were no slides for what it's worth. There was just, it was a placeholder, but now I've got these here. So you weren't missing much. This was a program update slide. Let's get us back in. Are folks seeing my slides now?
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the catch. So just a few key takeaways at the other side of this is, one, we're very much still moving from startup to full implementation. That's what you're seeing. Last year was a big part of ramping all of our program. We're going to continue to be doing that ramping up. What you're going to see is that this year uses the fund balance to deliver on our large multi-year investments. And how you see that is our spending this year is our budget is close to about $400 million, but our incoming revenue is close to $200 million. And a big part of that, and that's what you're going to see over the next couple of years, is that's a big part of spending down the budget on these large capital projects that we've committed to. And what you're going to see clearly is city bureaus are certainly at this point central to delivering PCEF funded programs and investments across the city. And we'll describe how that is. In some ways, it's very obvious, such as our investments in affordable housing. Some ways it's less obvious, and we'll talk about that here. All right. So all of this is situated within the framework of the Climate Investment Plan that has a 5-year implementation horizon. I know now carrying us out through June 30, 2029. So the investment plan, and I should actually update this, was most recently amended earlier this year in March of 26. But what is really important is, while the investment plan itself, the CIP, the Climate Investment Plan, is a 5-year roadmap for our investments, the way we actualize that every year, it happens through the budget process. City Council has to authorize that spending each year. So it gives us that roadmap, but each year we've got to ask for that permission and say, yep. And so that's what happens to the budget process. So each year we're budgeting for that 5 years of the CIP to do that. And so we'll be going through what this year's budget shows up as. And then, as you all will hear later in a presentation from James, the CIP itself is reviewed annually to account for program performance and community needs, and ultimately will result in those updates that we did earlier this year, and updates we expect you all will bring later and early next year. Now, as you look across the entire climate investment plan, this is the breakdown when we talk about implementing partners, those that actually, that are the primary implementers. That doesn't mean they're the end recipient. So, for instance, you see a good chunk of funding is moving through city bureaus, another through nonprofits, then several strategic programs, our public schools, and TriMet. But even when we talk about city bureaus, the end recipient isn't the Portland Housing Bureau, as one example. It may be the affordable housing developer that is developing that low income, the higher efficiency affordable housing. So this just gives you the primary implementer. And you're going to see different ways in which this is cut out when we dive into this current year's budget. Now, this is our first sort of just view, and I'll show pie graphs in the next set of slides about this as it reflects and relates to this current year's budget. The cumulative budget is about $386 million. Now, to the right, what you see is all the different city bureaus that are budgeted for PCEF funding this current year. So ranging from the Bureau of Transportation all the way down to the Water Bureau. And so that totals, moving through city bureaus, about $192 million. And then to the left here, you see the funding that is moving through BPS at the top left, and then funding at the bottom, really going to the city administration. So that's for things like administrative expenses in the city, for overhead, for things like our revenue division, collections of the funds, 311, which we contract with to do some special, some additional work for us, the budget office, chief sustainability officer, procurement. And so, but when I get to the top, in the top left, where we talk about the BPS budget, that really accounts for a lot of our community grants that we directly administer that are outgoing from the program. That's about that $60.3 million. That accounts for external funding that we have to our partners for our Collaborating for Climate Action grants. We'll break those down in the next slides. And then several of our strategic programs there. All right. And then our own administration, which is at 13.7 million at the very top of that line. Okay. Now, when you break this down into those different wedges, this is what it looks like. And we'll have a series of slides that break each of these wedges down a little bit further. But what you'll see is half of the funding is moving through city bureaus. And then you've got the other wedges on the other side between our community grants, our external strategic programs, collaborative for climate action, and so forth. When you break that wedge that's focused on city bureaus down further, so that 50% of the fund that the fund budget for this coming year, you see this is the breakdown. Again, the largest is about 25% is going to the Bureau of Transportation. We'll talk about what some of those projects are in a little bit. Second largest in this current year is actually going to the Bureau of Fleet and Facilities. And a big portion of that is going to the update and the redo and the movement of investment in the Cutter Garage. This is the facilities on Swan Island that is intended to support the city in its fleet electrification efforts. A next big chunk is going to Portland Parks and Recreation. That's a lot of that is focused on our tree planting efforts, both our maintenance of existing street trees and so forth. So this just gives you that broad wedge. Again, there's many others, but I want to see it in this way, and we'll go a couple different ways of cutting this. Now, again, this is just a reiteration of what I shared. Top 5 bureaus receiving PCEF funding starts with PBOT, Housing Bureau, Fleet and Facilities, Parks and Recreation, and then Prosper Portland. I realized I skipped the housing on the previous slide. So this just talks about some of those major investments. For PBOT, it's things like streetcar, LED, street light replacements, bike and pedestrian capital improvements, active transportation programming, like Sunday Parkways, which is still playing out this summer. Housing Bureau, it's the things you'd expect. A lot of our investments in new affordable housing, making sure they are better, cleaner, and more efficient to operate, as well as upgrading existing affordable housing. Fleet and Facilities, this is electrifying the city fleet, updating city buildings, and then building out the Cutter Garage. Parks and Recreation, again, that's mostly focused on that proactive care for our street trees within the city and building that programming out, as well as planting new trees. And then Prosper Portland. So a big part of this investment is some of the work initiating in the early funding in the Broadway corridor net zero housing development by Related Northwest, and then continuing implementation of our B grant program that they administer, which provides clean energy funding for small businesses. And Tamale Boy was a recent grantee of that program, for instance, that got a little press coverage in the Portland Business Journal a month ago or so ago. Now, when we look at that other side of the wedge, now this is the external strategic programs wedge, as well as collaborative for climate action. What we've got budgeted this year is about a little bit over 100 million. And what I didn't count for is community grants, because I think those are more understood, but that would fall on the other side as well. But when we break down this wedge, you'll see these are where we've got several of our large marquee programs. Energy friendly homes. That's our effort to retrofit single family homes across the city. We've got a big chunk of investments focused on our schools. So that's the round wedge here, MESD, 30 million. In addition to, we did it through 2 different awards or paths. So there's 2 wedges, but as well as our climate friendly schools program. So cumulatively this coming year, we've got budgeted about 44 million heading to our public schools to do a range of work on those facilities. And then other programming that you may be familiar with, such as our e-bike rebate program, 5 million, our programming that's going to be tackling unregulated multifamily housing, that's up top here in the blue, SP2, 11 million, and so on. Okay. Now, I think this is the last slide that I've got here. Really, the key takeaways for the group, and I'll encourage questions at this point, is really the 5-year funding plan is allocated fully through June 30, 2029, and that's inclusive of those future forecasted revenues. Now, a big part of the work, and as it goes with any new programming, as folks know that have developed programming, that it takes time to go from startup to full implementation, and we're very much in that upswing right now with expenditures that have been growing year over year on average about 150%. This next budget year, this budget is projected to spend about 386 million. That's what we've got budgeted. And that's twice the projected revenue of 202 million. So it reflects the planned use of the fund balance, not just the incoming revenues, but the fund balance as well, to deliver on a majority of those major capital investments, including the Broadway Corridor Project, TriMet's 82nd Avenue Project, the Clean Industry Hub, and a lot of our schools work. And yes, a big portion, nearly 200 million of that budget will support work led by city bureaus and central administration. And last but not least, it's just important to acknowledge that outside of BPS, our staff that administer, provide oversight and management of these resources, PCEF funding supports well over 200 FTE of city staff. So outside of BPS that are delivering climate-focused investments in housing, transportation, workforce, and green infrastructure programs. And so,
any questions? Yes, Danielle.
Hi, thanks, Sam. That was a great overview. I just have some kind of probably newbie questions to kind of get some context around these numbers, if you don't mind. So I have two. The first one is the breakout of the pie pieces across bureaus and grants and those other different ways to slice it. Is there direction given on how those slices, the size of those slices are determined? Does that change every year? Is that kind of set within the 5 years and we shouldn't expect to see much change within it? So just kind of curious, like how the share of those slices came to be and what's driving that.
yeah, it's a great question. The overall share of the slices, when you look at, and what I gave you was a snapshot of the current fiscal year we're in. And so what doesn't change, or maybe it changes if there's into the climate investment plan, but it's baked into the climate investment plan is the 5-year summation. And we didn't share that summation, that 5-year summation of those wedges. But what changes it does change year to year, because some of the years bureau programming may ramp up or may ramp down. They're planning on doing a notice of funding availability one year, they're not another year. On some of these capital projects, they don't tend to be consistent spending. They tend to not spend, spend, and then come back down, just because there's a lot of little planning work that's less that have less expenditures, and they all of a sudden are spending once they get into construction, and then they come back down. And then some of the programming is consistent. So it'd really be a matter of getting into and breaking down what is really programming related spend, where we expect to see a steady spend year to year and those wedges be consistent, versus where do we see more of that variable spend based on, it's capital work that's happening. And you tend to see that kind of, and the schools are a good example where the capital looks a little like programming because it happens in the summers. They don't spend much in the year. Then the summer they get in the construction, they spend, they down, and so that plays out in the year, in the budget year, more consistently at an annual level.
Okay. I actually think you answered my second question in your answer to my first question, so I have no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, Danielle, thank you. Robin?
Yeah, Sam, thanks for that update. Lots of numbers, and I'm a number guy. So there's a lot of there's the ballot initiative. MOTA's right now off the table, but it could be back on the table. These are initiatives that may kind of take some PCEF money, but you said a few moments ago that we're committed through 2029. So if any of those initiatives or other initiatives come down in the future, can you confirm that those funds have to come from somewhere? It has to come from that pie chart that you showed earlier, or pie charts that you showed earlier. And if that's the case, that would require a reallocation of basically the CIP. Maybe that's not the right technical word, but it would require a reallocation. And how would that process work? Would we make, let's say 15 million has to be diverted because of something. I'm just making that number up. Would we make a recommendation to pull 50 million from somewhere? And would the council then have to vote on it, or is the council just going to make that decision? I'm just kind of curious how that'll play out.
I think it's certainly, maybe I'll answer the first thing really just clearly. Yes. In what we have, there's two really variables that go into this. There's the incoming funding, so the clean energy surcharge. Are we getting any more funding? We check that every year with our city economist, and that has stayed steady since that surge several years back. So that is steady. So there's no new additional projected revenue. So then in the climate investment plan, current to all the revenues that are in the fund balance now and forecasted through June 30, 2029. So if there are any changes, whether it's ballot measures or whether even if it's MODA, there will have to be a reallocation of funds, or there will have to be an adjustment made. Now, how that adjustment process happens, I think just given the role of the committee, I do expect that the conversations would start with you all. Now, that may come with some initial direction, guidance, priorities from council. We don't know. We'd have to really engage that depending on the scale of changes that materialize. But I would expect that you all, as the primary body engaged in stewarding these resources and providing that community input, would be a starting point for that conversation around how we make those changes. But that ultimately council is the ultimate decision maker, and so they would have those recommendations would start with you all. The work would start with you all. You all would make those recommendations, and we'd bring them to the city council for final approval. So Robin, that is correct in that there would have to be adjustments to these commitments here, and there's different flavors and ways in which we can talk about those. There are agreements we've signed, dotted, and we've got execute agreements, commitments to give resources to it, and plans are baked around those. That's probably not going to be the starting place for taking resources. It may be, depending on the extent of resources, though, that are needed. But then there are other places, such as, for instance, city, their programming in the city budget that we budget annually that are not committed in the same way. So I think there'd have to be that kind of really thorough analysis of the entire plan, alignment with the client, alignment with all of our objectives, and then ultimately sort of the durability, I guess, of like how committed those resources are. If they're out the door, they're gone and spent, but is there a contract behind them? Are they, and so forth.
So just a quick follow-up clarification. So what you're saying is if one of these initiatives or something else comes up, it's not really extra PCEF funds that is kind of being used. It's basically a forced diversion of funding from some other existing CIP, or city agency to fund whatever initiative that is being put forth.
Correct. Aside from the interest that has been obviously the topic of conversation here so far amongst you all, that would be that's correct, Robin.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Robin. Thank you. Megan.
Thanks, Sam. This is super helpful. And I'll make a couple observations. First, it's exciting to be moving into like from implementation or from startup to implementation phase. So you kind of named that early on. And that's, I think, exciting to like hear as people, we've been planning a lot and now we're seeing money actually getting out there in the communities in lots of different ways. So that's exciting. And another thing that's pretty evident in your presentation is something I think we've all noticed, but that the media doesn't necessarily communicate in the way that, but that there's just like this huge shift in PCEF. Originally was funding just community grants. And when you show this, it's very obvious that PCEF has become a major portion of, well, I guess we don't see the full city budget, but it's been becoming a major funder of many bureaus. I guess significant funder. I don't know what percentage of it, including like I'm noticing our 2026-27 fiscal year, 60 million allocated to community grants and nearly 50 to PBOT. So like almost equivalent. And then city bureaus totally almost 200 million. So that's quite a bit more, than for community grants. Just an observation. Also, a lot of talking points in here kind of get at, like, this is a helpful presentation, but I wonder if we can somehow make these talking points more crisp and available to media and everybody so that we have like quick ways to communicate. Like Maria pointed out that the media is often kind of getting it a little bit wrong, or the public's getting it a little bit wrong, or counselors are getting a little bit wrong on like where PCEF money is going, and like just to kind of re-emphasize over and over, the money is allocated. It's actually a major funder of city bureaus. So let's kind of come some observations, but a question. On slide 4, if you can go to that one, that like rectangle box one, this is the overall 5-year plan. In my math, you don't have percentages on there, but the 360, so my interest, just to be upfront, is that I care a lot about how much we're proportioning to community grants from our whole bucket. So that's kind of where my question trajectory is based from. But 363 of this total pie, I think I calculated to be like 22% of the 5-year plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, to nonprofit community grants.
I don't have my calculator, but I'm going to assume you're correct, Megan.
Okay, I could be wrong on that, but it's, and then if you go to the pie chart on page 7, so that's the 5-year plan. But then page 7 in our 1-year fiscal budget, we're at 16%. And I guess my question is, it doesn't show in the slide, but I'm curious about, we're looking at like a 1-year slice mainly of a 5-year plan, and this is year 3, right, of the 5-year plan. So I guess I'm kind of just curious if that percentage, I remember us talking at some point that that percentage changes a lot over the years, or the amount changes for community grants. Just wondering if you can offer additional insight beyond the 26, 27.
Okay, I think yeah, you may be. I think I'm gonna intuit you may be getting at another piece here. So, the percentage is one thing, and percentage just because it's a percentage of a whole. If 1 year we're doing a large capital project or moving significant capital resources, that is going to make that percentage smaller. Now, I think maybe what you may be getting at is our community grants allocations as an absolute dollar value.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Is we now overall, I think on average we had projected about 60 million a year. Now, I think this was just the nature of taking a pause in the beginning and to develop the climate investment plan and rolling out that we funded some of the early rounds larger than we would have otherwise. And so what it has meant, and it's something that I think maybe D'Angelo is pointing to in his comments earlier, is that we are actively, and this is part of the review process, looking at and discussing, and I know you're on the subcommittee, around community grants are going to be at a lower value in these latter years. So this year, the cycle we're currently evaluating is 60 million, but in the next 2 cycles, we've got decisions to make around how do we view those cycles, because it's either we have 2 smaller cycles, 1 large cycle, 1 really small cycle, or should there be a proposal to add resources there, we could level them out. So right now, what we are seeing is, yes, correct. And I think if that's what you're getting to, I'm seeing that by the nods. In the calendar year 27, we're in community grant 2026 right now. 2027 cycle and 2028 cycle would be lower if nothing else is done.
Yeah, thank you. That did totally answer all my question. And I think that is something the evaluation subcommittee will look at. And just as we review these budget things, I will kind of be tracking for where's the community grant expenditure and how much are we prioritizing that. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Any other questions? Drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah, and for folks, these slides will be up online afterwards, so folks will have access to these slides. But obviously, we understand there's always budgets are never easy and never fun to necessarily talk about in public when you're dealing with numbers that can get squirrely pretty quickly. So we're certainly here afterwards to follow up on any questions that may come up.
Beautiful. All right. If there aren't any other questions, then we'll go ahead and move on. James?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Moses. And yeah, to kind of close things out for the evening here, I'm going to provide a little bit of content and what will be kind of a review for those of you who have been on the committee already. And then for new committee members, this is a overview of the Climate Investment Plan Annual Update, or the CIP Annual Update that Sam had mentioned it. We've kind of talked about a little bit more, but this is an active body of work that we're collaborating on right now with PCEF subcommittee comprised of Andre and Meg. And so I'm going to talk through the process, kind of the objectives and the timeline of where we're at, and give an opportunity for some questions. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So overall, as we both launched the climate investment plan and then have been implementing it, we've had a lot of learnings along the way. We've had development on kind of the build out of 37 strategic programs, plus some major projects like Collaborating for Climate Action, as well as the ongoing grant activities. And so we instituted, starting last year, the practice of an annual update to the CIP to be able to capture some of those lessons along the way, and to be able to really, as these talking points here outline, make sure that we're implementing the climate investment plan in a way that is still aligned with our climate and equity goals, that we're taking a look through the CIP process to track the development and spend of different programs, and transparently show that, and to have the opportunity to deploy resources more effectively if needed, including, if needed, moving between strategic programs, which did happen in last year's climate investment plan update, and to make sure that those adjustments, where warranted and recommended by you as a full committee, are informed by the data, by lessons we learned along the way, as well as emerging needs that might be coming up through the community, or through priorities that have emerged over the previous year. And so this work is really led by a subcommittee that is tasked with working with us as staff to process this information, to be able to understand the status of different programs, to be able to ask questions of the information being provided. This is also an opportunity to understand perspectives from city leadership, from community members. There is a public outreach and engagement element of this that I'll talk about a little bit later. The role is also to identify programs where there might be more questions that are asked or need for adjustments, to be able to provide guidance where needed and warranted on reallocation of funds or changing some of the goals of the programs as we've learned more over the year, and to recommend overall process improvements to how we work and how we do and implement the CIP. And I think also, frankly, to inform future climate investment plans as well. And so we do ask quite a bit from the subcommittee, and they're really grateful to Megan and Andre. And I also wanted to put this out for new committee members, that there is an opportunity for an additional member if you'd like. If one of you would like to join, I recognize that it would take a little getting up to speed, but we can follow up afterwards with you all to be able to provide some more information about what's involved, the time commitment, and the trajectory that we're on. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this is really also acknowledges a few different moving pieces and major inputs. When in 2024 we brought on the city climate projects, there was also an obligation or commitment to do a 2-year review of those city climate projects, recognizing that this was a new body of work and that this was very different, as many of you have said, than the initial vision of PCEF of being primarily a community grant-making entity. And so we really started our process with evaluating and doing the two-year review of city climate projects, and then moving into a full review of all 37 strategic programs, plus the community grant processes that we've established, and recognizing that there can and there have been some small elements of city budget decisions made by city council that do impact the climate investment plan, that we need to be able to capture those and make the kind of harmonize what is in the climate investment plan versus or in conjunction with council action. This was also a placeholder. Maria provided information about kind of things that didn't happen, but there could have been different actions that we'd have to incorporate. Really, they were pretty minor this year overall. And all of this kind of coalesces into recommendations that are potential adjustments to the climate investment plan. I'll talk through this a little bit more, but the process really is that the subcommittee provides a recommendation to you all as a full committee. Then there's deliberation, public comment, and then it will go to city council ultimately for consideration and adoption. And so we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, which is just a very kind of high level overview of the types of things that can change, or the types of variables and outcomes within the climate investment plan evaluation and update. And so we do provide information, and more is coming, about every single strategic program that is being implemented by PCEF. And one action might be no action, that the programs are on track, that they can and should just move forward as is. Or there could be concerns raised where in the next annual CIP update, the subcommittee recommends taking another look or kind of flagging that. There could be adjustment of funding levels for strategic programs or community grants based on need and performance, pace of spending. There might be places where there's changes and program goals. I will say a lot has happened in the larger national world in terms of clean energy incentives and programs and the ability to leverage some of those. Or targets or the scope of programs might need to change a little bit. And then there can and often are technical updates or changes needed to align with city budget actions. So that's kind of the realm of possible changes that we envision and are working with the subcommittee as they evaluate the CIP annual update. And then I just have one more slide, which is a bit of kind of where we're at and some of the steps along the way. As I mentioned, really the city climate projects were reviewed first. We presented that content to the CIP update subcommittee and had some really good back and forth on questions and some clarifications. We're meeting next week through a total of up to 3 hours of meetings over next week to talk about other the kind of PCEF managed and initiated strategic programs as well as community grants. And then we have some elements of our work where we're also providing and getting input from other city bureaus and engaging over this process with city council. And also just want to highlight this, we are working with the city budget office to capture information about projections and actual spend, especially within the city climate projects, and be able to reconcile where the pace of spending might not be completely on track or meeting expectations. And then the process here is that over the summer and early fall, we'll be evaluating that information, with the CIP update subcommittee or the evaluation subcommittee, and then bringing a recommendation to the full PCEF committee in fall to then be able to start our public engagement and be able to get public comments, be able to have some kind of opportunities for input to you all as a full committee before you make a recommendation to city council as a whole. And then that we do want to have a recommendation to city council by December. We're hoping that this year it can go a little bit faster than last year. Last year we didn't get to full adoption until March. Ideally, that would happen a little bit earlier. Some of that is out of our control, but that's kind of our plan and hope for this year's CIP update. So that was a lot and pretty quick, but I'll open it up for questions if folks have questions. Yeah, Tracy.
Thanks, James. This was great. I heard you have a subcommittee of 2, is that correct? And are you looking for more, meaning maybe one additional subcommittee member?
Yeah, thanks. And I briefly mentioned it, but I'll put it out there again that there is an opportunity for another committee member to join. We were thinking, and as we kind of discussed earlier in the committee before we had the 3 new members, this is an opportunity to jump right in. If somebody wants, one of the new PCEF committee members wants to jump into this process and really dive into the content of what all the programs we're doing within PCEF. It's a really good opportunity to do that. It is a fairly significant time commitment that we can talk through with you. But yeah, we welcome that and can follow up with the 3 new members to gauge interest. So.
And then a follow-up question. I see that the city council engagement has started in earnest this month, and just really curious, reflecting on how it went last year. And you already touched on, some of the maybe missed opportunities to really communicate with city council. I'm just really curious if you see, room for any of the council members and or, perhaps my co-chair and I to support staff in any of the kind of city council engagement. Do you need any support is my question.
Yeah, I think I'll pass it to Sam. Maybe I saw him come off mute. But yeah, we do envision opportunities for earlier engagement and information sharing and input. Sam, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just say we've already had at least a council office reach out about that. And I think we're gearing up to figure that out with city leadership around how do we do that effectively this round, certainly more effectively than it played out last go around. I think there was a desire to get a certain amount of some of the underspend analysis under our belts, but we're going to be following up, and I'm happy in our next check-in to kind of share with you, Tracy, just how that's going. But yeah, we are expecting to figure that out and looking and just awaiting some of that guidance from our leadership around how to structure that in a way that makes sure that everyone is getting a fair touch.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Randall?
Yeah,
Yes.
I would be interested to hear more about that. The opportunity for the subcommittee.
Great. Yeah, we can reach out and share more about kind of the scheduling and what's involved and kind of the pace of meetings, content yet to come. So yeah, we can follow up afterwards.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up.
We'll make it worthwhile. So I'm excited to hear that. That's good. It's honestly it's a great way to jump in and just get a understanding of our programs. It's really you'll get the backdoor to be like how's it going and what are the challenges, and so this is great. Thank you, Randall.
I think for me it's an opportunity to, like, some of the things that we've heard about tonight with the misinformation that's out there. One of the best ways to find out the real information is get involved, right? So I think that's why we're all here, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Sam, would you like to close us out?
Thank you. Great meeting, folks. Again, really excited to have you, Randall, Tamara, and Danielle on board. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend and enjoy the rest of your July. We'll see you all in August.